welcome back to the course. Today we'll be updating our UI a little bit to add some more visual representation to how long the round has left. I feel like that's a little bit necessary. Then we'll move into setting up some really simple player respawn systems. It'll kind of help us a lot with testing, and it really leads into the next major system I want to implement. It's also going to lead into some fun little issues that we'll run into, which that next system will actually fix, thankfully. So let's just kind of get into it and figure it out as we go. We'll start with the UI. UI is really simple. We're going to create a new scene of user interface. We're going to call this the round timer underscore. Actually, we'll just call it the round timer UI. We'll add a label to it because we're going to want a label. I'm going to rename this label to the round timer. Actually, we'll just call this the timer label. Timer label. There we go. I'm going to set this to the center preset. So a really quick thing, click on the root of the scene, so the round timer UI control node, make sure that that is set to full rect, go to the timer label, and then set that to the middle preset. So this one here, the top middle. I'm going to add 4 zeros here, 3 and 4 zeros. Hit Control S and save, and we're going to go and save this under the under the UI. There we go, the UI folder. Now I'm going to hit Control S and save. Now, if we go down to the file system and we type in our HUD, I'm pretty sure that's what we called it, we can start adding some things into this, right? I want to add the new round timer that we just added, so we can use Control-Shift-A, type in round for round timer, add that. Now that's added to our scene. If we click play and we find out and we check, okay, the round timer is in place. This leads into another thing that I want to change. It's this, the coins in the top left corner. I kind of dislike having the coin counter just say the word coins. I don't know why, I feel like it's just not visually appealing. So what I'm going to do really quickly, since this is a very simple thing to fix, is I'm going to click the coin counter, click the open scene button. For the HBox container, I'm going to use Control A. I'm going to add a texture rect. Texture rects are, for a lack of better words, a square for a texture. Right now it's completely empty. I'm going to pull this above the coin counter number. I'm going to delete the label that's there because we don't need the label anymore. And all we have to do here is just add a texture to it. So you can click where it says empty, click load, go down to the assets, the platformer set, tiles, scroll down to where it has your coin. And now you'll see that we have a bit of a smushed coin. Smushed coins aren't really our favorite type of coins. We want normal kind of rounded coins. We don't want smushed coins. So to fix this, we're going to go to the inspector, the expand and stretch mode. The expand mode will be fit width proportional, and the stretch mode will just be keep aspect centered. This will just kind of help us with the full screening, and well, it'll make it look a little bit better. So if we hit play one more time and we full screen the game, you'll see the coin stays the same shape and size, and it just feels a little bit better. Now you can add what you want to this. You could keep the label and then add the coin. You could add another label. You could add an X after the coins. So say you have 4 coins, you put an X there, so you have 4 X coins. It's entirely your choice. That this is one of those things where it's just like what looks best for you. So with the coin counter set up, let's go back into the HUD real quick. We need to figure out our round timer. Now, the round timer, if we open the scene again and we give it a script, we're going to need to start thinking about what we want to kind of, like how we want to be tracking the time. We'll give this a quick class name of round timer underscore UI, because that's how I like to name my UI. That's my naming convention I like to use, the little underscore UI. And we need to think about, as I said, what we want to keep track of. Well, we're going to want to change the label, right? We're going to want to change that to the correct time. So let's add that in. Let's create an on ready for that as a label. So for a timer, which we don't actually have in the scene, we know we're going to at least need a variable for the timer so we can access a timer. So let's go and create the timer. We'll just call this the var round underscore timer. Set this to be the type of timer, and we'll set it equal to null. So next question comes in is, where is our round timer being kind of set, right? Where is that running? And if we remember correctly, in the game state manager here, we do have a timer. So if we go down to the file system once again, and we do game state manager, we have the state timer here. Now, the state timer is what we actually want to change. I've, second time recording this, changed the wait time to 30 seconds and I clicked auto start on just to get the timer rolling. So with that in mind, we know that the timer is here. How do we get access to this without coupling things together too heavily? Well, we can do the really smart and simple thing. We can go down into our file system. We can go to the auto loads and the signal bus, and we can go and create a new signal for this. So let's go and do that. We'll create a new signal, and this will just be for on underscore game underscore state underscore manager underscore ready. And we're going to need to pass in some parameters here. So the round timer, or the UI for it, is going to need to grab access to the timer. The timer is contained within the game state. The game state has its own class for game state manager, right? So what we can do here is we can pass in a parameter for the GSM, or the game state manager for short, and we can give it the type game state manager. Now we can copy that signal that we just created, so everything but the word signal, create a new function, type in the words emit underscore, and then control V to paste in what we just copied. Give it a void return type. And then what we have to do is grab the on underscore game state manager ready dot emit and emit in the GSM. Like so. Let's make sure to save that with control S. So with that created, that actually means we now need to get the game state manager firing the signal, right? So let's go to that. Let's follow this road. The game state manager needs to fire the signal. Where is it going to fire it? Oh, it's going to fire it in the ready function. But we're going to need to fire it after the state timer.timeout has been connected in here, just to make sure the order of operations flows smoothly. So to do that, after the state timer has sent its signal, or connected its signal, we want to call the signal bus dot emit on game state manager ready, and then we want to pass in self as the parameter, because itself, of course, is the game state manager. So what that will do is when we connect that signal into the round timer, it will give us access to this variable here, the state timer variable. So with that in mind, let's go to the round timer. In the ready function, let's grab that signal bus and then use dot on underscore game state manager ready dot connect. We're going to connect that to on underscore game state underscore manager underscore ready. I want to come up with a simpler and faster way of naming things, but that's the thing of readability or speed, efficiency or readability. And because this is a tutorial, I want to keep the readability as good as possible. So create a new function for it. Remember, it has to pass in the GSM of type game state manager with a void return type. And what we can now do is, for our variable for the round timer, is we can use round timer equals the GSM dot state timer. So what we've done now is we've hooked the state timer from the game state manager into the round timer without actually coupling it too well, which is really good. It means if the game state manager doesn't exist, all we have to do in the process specifically is just do, okay, if round timer is equal to null return. That way, if the game state manager just, as I said, doesn't exist, we're fine. We don't need to think about it or be concerned about it. So let's go and actually update our timer to make sure that it is now displaying the correct time. So to do this, what we can do is we can grab the timer label, then access the .text specific part of it, and then we can set that equal to str for string conversion. So str, and then we want the round timer dot time left. There we go. Round timer dot time left. Now, there is actually going to be an issue with this. There's going to be two issues with this. If you've been following from setup to now, there's going to be two issues. And I've just remembered there's one thing I forgot to change when I kind of messed up the recording. And I will show you how to fix that now. So what I'm going to do is move the UI container back down to here, That's very, very specific. It needs to be outside of the manager container. There we go. Now, if I click play, this is how your scenes should be set up. This should be your file structure or your scene tree for the main. If I click play, the timer will not update. Now, this is actually why the UI container was placed above the manager container. This is an order of operations thing. The UI container is trying to listen for a signal and connect to a signal that has never been fired before, so it doesn't actually really know what it's listening for, which means when the manager container becomes ready, the UI container will not know really what's happening. So what we can do is move the UI container above the manager container and then click play and see our next issue. We now have a timer. It's counting down. It has like 12 digits. It's vibrating like it's drunk too much coffee, like me in the mornings. And that's kind of off-putting, and we don't really want that. So to fix that, in the process here where we're setting the timer, what might actually be a really good idea, if you want to get good coding conventions, is to create a new function for this. We'll do func set underscore timer underscore label underscore text. Give it a void return type. Then we'll go timer underscore label dot text is equal to str, and then what we want to write now is round f, so round the float, and then give that parentheses, and then inside those parentheses we just want to grab the round timer dot time left. Now instead of just setting it in the process like this, we can call that function we just created to make it all nice and clean. Then we can hit play, and ta-da, we now have a really, really clean looking timer. You can keep decimals if you want. There is a way of doing that, and if memory serves, it's doing that. I could be wrong. There is a very specific way of using round F. I could probably just control click on it and it'll show me here. It won't actually show me here. That is surprising. Well, in the documentation, the actual documentation, not the built-in documentation, there is a way of using round F to add an extra decimal to that. I genuinely do not remember right now, but we don't really want the extra decimal anyway, so this will be fine. Now, with that done, and our new signal created, and our coin text actually, into an image, we're starting to kind of pull this together a little bit more. Now, the next issue that I really want to fix with this video is the issue of this. If you fall off the stage, you either have to wait for the timers to hit 0 or you need to reset the game. Now, if that was a launch thing, that would be hell. Nobody would like that. That would be very problematic and a bit of a problem, right? So to fix that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new scene. It's going to be of other node, and it's going to be of type area 2D. We are going to create what's known as a dead zone. So I'm going to call this the dead zone. I'm going to hit Control A and I'm going to give it a collision shape. And the dead zone is really what it sounds like. Anything that falls into this zone is considered dead and needs to be queue freed and reset. Kind of like how, or a good way of explaining it, if you have a controller with joysticks, joysticks have dead zones. They have built-in dead zones on them where it stops using its functionality after a certain point. Usually it's closer to the center, so it can stop, like if you are too close to the center, it stops doing something specific. Reason for that, stops joystick drift and things like that. But that's kind of a different thing. That's a bit more mechanical than technological, kind of. Yes, that's kind of what we want. We want to basically go, you have fallen into the river, reset your position. And we're going to do that in a really interesting way because it will lead into what I want to do next. So with the dead zone created, let's hit Control S and save. I'm going to go and save this under the handlers, just the big mess of handlers that we have in here that aren't player or enemy specific, because this is really level specific, and it should be probably saved under level under a new folder, but we'll get to that when we want to rework the file tree, which we will be doing later in the future. So let's add a script to this now. Luckily, we don't actually need to add a class name to this, and as we move forward, we're going to be a bit more sparing about where we use class names. So what do we want to do here? Well, we want to connect the signal that the area has like predefined, right? That is for the on body entered, because that's going to look for anything that is of node 2D that enters its area. So let's do that. Let's go on body entered, or just body entered dot connect. We'll connect that to on underscore body underscore entered. Copy that. Create some new lines at the bottom. Create the function for it. This is going to need parameters. And the parameters that it is going to need is, if you actually look in the signals, it'll tell you node or body of node 2D. So we'll just write body of type node 2D. Make sure you give it the body of type node 2D. If you don't do that, it'll have an issue. And if you don't give it specifically a node 2D, it can also kind of give you some really big grumpy messages, and you don't really want those. So on body entered, what do we actually want to do here? Well, we're going to want to first check. Well, actually, no, we're not going to want to check anything first. Let's just do a queue-free. Let's just go, okay, on body entered, queue-free. I'm going to hit Control S and save. And I'm going to go back to the main scene, go down to the level in our file structure, and I'm going to grab our base level and I'm going to open it. Because what I want this to be is something that we put into every level in its own kind of unique way with a different shape if need be. So we'll hit base level here, hit Control Shift A, we'll add the dead zone. We're going to right click on it and hit Editable Children, go to the collision shape, inspector, shape, and now we have our new little shape here. I'm going to give it a rectangle shape. I'm going to move it down to just below the water. I'm going to grab the bottom right corner and I'm going to stretch it out. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit further than you would kind of think to, primarily because if we had like speed upgrades or double jumps, we want to make sure the player can't jump over this and then fall indefinitely. Because we don't have those yet, this will be big enough for now. We may have to change it in the future. So what do you think is going to happen the second I hit play? Because we're about to, and something kind of funny is going to happen. Well, let's see if you're right. Nothing, right? Now, why is literally nothing happening? And that is because I forgot to write body.queue-free inside the on entered here. That is me making a mistake. Let's click play and see the funny. That is the funny. The funny is it deletes everything it touches, right? That's kind of what this is designed to do. Anything that touches this, it deletes. But we don't actually want it deleting our level. That's a little bit too fast, a little bit too much power for just one little dead zone. Now, the reason that it's doing that, if you can figure it out, I suggest you pause the video and go and test and make sure. If you don't, if we go and click on the dead zone, we go down to the collision drop down here. We are literally looking only for anything that exists on the floor level, or in this case, the level, right? That's what our mask is looking for. We don't want that. We want it looking for the player, the enemy, and the collectibles. So now what will happen if I press play? There's nothing. The level won't delete itself. Nothing bad will happen from this. But if I jump off the ledge, the player deletes itself. But now we've got this interesting issue of we need to respawn the player because it would just suck a little bit if the person has to just sit here and wait. It's kind of the same issue, right? So to do that, we are going to need to figure out if let's go to the dead zones script. So on body entered, we're going to do a little check. We're going to go if body is player entity. So it's basically saying, okay, is this the player entity? And what we'll do right now is we'll just write print and we will print out yes. And then we are going to go and hit play and yeet ourselves into the box. And as you can see, it prints out yes. Okay, so it's literally saying, okay, I know the player entity is there. With that information, we now need to somehow let the rest of the game know, or more specifically, the entity spawn system, the thing that handles the spawns, that the player has kind of been queue-freed, right? Now, to do that, we can actually just create a new signal. So let's go and once again create a new signal. This will be for the, we'll call this on underscore player underscore entered underscore dead underscore zone. So on the player entering the dead zone, let's go and create a function for that with the emit underscore paste, like we keep doing, void return type, and then we'll just go and emit that. So on player entered dead zone dot emit I love creating signals. Signals really are my favorite thing. You just do so many things with them. You know, you can, like, on enemy hit, or on hit specifically, or on enemy death, on fled. There's so many different unique things you can do just by interacting with these signals now. Create some new lines there to give it some space. Yes, so on, or emit on player enter dead zone. Okay, so let's go back to our dead zone. Hit save, make sure we save. Go back to our dead zone here. And then let's emit that signal. Signal bus dot emit on player enter dead zone. And hit Control S and save. Now let's go down to the entity spawn system and have a bit of a giggle about how we've set this up, because let's go to the player region here, collapse the enemy region. We have done this where if the player has been spawned, it will trip this boolean to true, right here, player spawned, trip it to true. If the player spawned equals false, spawn player. When it spawns, trip it to true. That way it stops it from running 1,005 times a second. And well, to show this off, I don't think I actually showed this off. This is what happens if you don't actually flip that switch. Yeah, you end up with an interesting concept for a game. We'll just say that, and everything is exploding. That's what happens if you don't trip it true. So let's keep that as true real quick. Now, in the signal here for the ready function, let's actually go and connect that new signal we just created. So signal bus dot connect, or not dot connect, dot on underscore player enter the dead zone dot connect. We're just going to set this to respawn, or on player respawn, on underscore player underscore respawn. Because that's going to be a bit more obvious on what we're actually doing here. So at the very bottom, we'll create a new function, call it on player respawn. And we're going to do the really simple thing of grabbing the player spawned boolean, and we're just going to set it to false. So what should technically happen here is the player dies, or the player gets deleted due to the dead zone. It then trips that signal, which changes player spawn from true to false, and then it respawns and changes it back to true. Let's go test that and make sure that's what's happening and that we're not spawning an infinite amount of players. We are not. All right, let's go and throw ourselves off a ledge. And we now have this kind of infinite respawning system, which is absolutely amazing. Now, the new problem, for the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed, is that this has opened us up to a very interesting, let's say, gameplay style. And that is known as die and repeat, because if you look at our coin counter, it is permanently increasing all the time. It is 100% increasing all the time. That is a bit of a problem. We don't want that to just be a way that you can play the game, because that's not fun. That's not really interacting with anything, right? That's what we would call a major bug, or a game-breaking bug. It doesn't actually stop the game from being playable, but it does make you question why you're playing the game. There's no challenge, there's no nothing. You can just do this infinitely. And that leads us into the next system, or the next video I want to create, and that is going to be about stat management and data storage. Now that sounds spooky and big and scary. It's really not. We're going to make it really, really simple, but it's going to be a little bit of a long video, and that's going to be a lot of fun for us just in general. Now, the next issue, of course, that we need to fix with that is this issue. The game has frozen. Well, it just hasn't entered the upgrade state correctly. And that is another issue we will end up fixing. But for now, this is kind of all I have for the day. Thank you for watching. I hope you are having a great day and a great game dev journey. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.